Pastor Cal, I've been in Fargo for many years. I was on staff at Northview for a number of years, which used to be First Assembly. And then about a couple of years ago, made a shift in my direction of my life, and we'll explain more as we're going along in what I'm doing. And I now do, and we have stuff up here that you can take with you, not trying to sell what we're doing, but let you know, and maybe we can help you, especially with some small communities and things like that. This is my friend Michael Bloom. Michael, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Michael Bloom. I am originally from Modesto, California, born and raised there until I was 18. When I was 18, I got saved. And when I got saved, my sister was living in Moorhead, Minnesota. I had never heard of Moorhead, Minnesota or Fargo, but I thought I should visit. I visited, went back to California, and for the first time felt God speak to me that I should move. And I'm so glad I did that. And moved, met Cal, met people like Cal, got plugged into the local church, got discipled, just really learned the gospel well from wonderful, godly people. Josh Sheldall here was one of my close mentors when he was in college. And I've been a police officer the last 8.5 years, and then worked in corrections for 2.5 years. And through that, God has done really unconventional ways of ministry while wearing the badge. And so I've just seen some incredible favor from God and blessing from God that I didn't think was going to ever be possible when I stepped into law enforcement. I just thought I was going to be answering 911 calls and hitting the beat, which I did at times, but he's also done a ton of crazy things and good things. And Cal's been one of my spiritual fathers and mentors. I think everyone in the world knows who Cal is or has heard of Cal, but if you haven't, he's amazing. And he's one of the most outgoing, go-getter, spirit-filled men I've ever met who I think he's going to do ministry literally until he dies. And it's not even a joke. I think you're just going to do it until you die.
Some days I think that might happen tomorrow, too.
It's like I call him, and he's one of the few people I've ever talked to that's just more excited about anything than me. I can't out-excite him. So I'm just honored to be his friend, to be a mentee of his and under his life. So. And
I still remember, I don't think it was the first time I met you, but when you really stood out to me in a significant way is I was sitting at Moxie Job having coffee, and you came up and said, "Hi, Pastor Cal," to me. You remember that? And you were working at Hornbacher's at the time. That's how far back that goes. And then Michael became an intern with me. First time he ever preached was where?
Southside Chicago.
Southside Chicago.
Yeah.
And I remember that night. I remember going up, and then I've watched some of the things we've done is unconventionally different. It's different. Again, I was a youth pastor for 30 plus years, and when I made the shift, I did not know what I was going to do. One of the keys for me is insurance was killing me. I went from having insurance through the church I was at, having to pay Cobra out of pocket. I was paying $1,600 a month for health insurance. And I drank coffee all the time at Starbucks. So I became good friends with the people there. I know I'm a little outgoing, but I would connect with people. And one day the manager asked, "If you ever need a job," and I said, "Well, if I need a job, I'm going to need someone to get insurance." And she said, "Well, Starbucks has the best benefits going." Now, I know it's not a Christian organization. They know who I am. They know I'm a pastor. You'll hear little stories here and there. But I went from paying $1,600 just for health insurance that was okay to having health, dental, vision, and disability insurance, and having better insurance and paying $425 a month. I went down a quarter. So I use that as part of raising my funds now for what I do with Reach the Heart. Reach the Heart is based on the idea of reaching, yes, Chicago. We've been to Chicago. This will be our 31st year of taking students there. We do now Minneapolis, but one of the dreams I have is to go to small communities as well, less than 1,000 people or approximately. We have been to Grafton. We're going back there. We're going to be in Max, North Dakota. We're also going to be in Crosby in a few weekends. We've been in Rice. Rice, Minnesota was phenomenal. Town of just less than 1,000 people, 350 people showed up for what we were doing. So we try different things, and we can talk more. But we wanted to talk a lot about things, and Michael explained what he's doing now with hip hop and hope. He's a rapper, believe it or not. He loves to rap. He might rap half his message for you, you know. I have no beat whatsoever, okay? So, but we want to talk about impacting rural communities. I take it most of you are from a smaller communities or have been there. And one of the things I've found is we go into these small communities, there's two areas that I've discovered that most major ministries steer clear of. Inner city and small communities. And for whatever reason, those are the two I love the most. And so that's what we're doing. So we're going to talk about, you know, how the church was designed to engage with the community. and we feel very strongly. And I will say this, just so that you know, when I started working at Starbucks, I can't make drinks worth, I can spit better than I can make drinks, okay? Excuse the blunt. But, you know, they know that, but they just let me be me, and I'm sharing and talk. They know I've had opportunities to pray with people and everything. And I know it's a secular organization, you can't, but again, we'll get into some of that later. How you can get connected with places that you might not think is really possible to be yourself or to be who you are as a believer. And that's what we are all about, and what we want to do with, you know, challenging you as small communities. When I go to small communities, and we've been checking out a few, it's amazing to watch how people are just open to talk. They really are, and they're just looking for somebody. So, how do we want to get started here, Michael? This is the first time we've ever done this together. So, the church was designed to engage the community. Tell me a little bit of what you think of that, and why is that?
Well, I think, so when I was in law enforcement, and when I first started, my third year, Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, Missouri. And so that's when, you know, we really started to see the beginning of the racial tension really start to escalate in the nation. And so I just remember as a cop, I never had felt so awkward and so, I would say, I never felt like so much of an outsider when I'd go on calls, go into schools, and you would see minority youth, you'd see youth, whether it was Native American, Black, Hispanic, you just felt attention because of the way the culture was selling everything. And so, however, I just felt like the Holy Spirit was speaking to me at the same time and saying, Michael, if you want to make a difference, you have to do things different. So you can't be the standard cop, you can't be the typical cop, you have to be the Spirit-filled cop. So you got to go out and do what the Holy Spirit tells you to do. We all wear a uniform. Like, man, pastors get stereotyped probably more than cops. So you guys wear an invisible uniform when you're a pastor, like you just carry that, the call of a pastor. And I just felt like the Lord was like, Mike, I want you to go and make a difference where no one else is doing anything different. And so I started reaching out to Pastor Cal when he was still at Northview Church, and I said, man, there's this public housing that's basically like our little inner city in Fargo called community homes. These huge, big blue buildings where, you know, it kind of saddens me that we have these areas in our cities, because it's like, let's take all the people who are low income, let's take all the people who are fatherless homes, and let's just put them all together and expect them to thrive. You know what I mean? Which our call load for policing is just through the roof in those places, for violence and domestics and suicidals. And so we engaged the church, and we came to the church because we were a government entity. We had no money. So we had no money for outreach. We had no money to say, we want to bring the gospel, we want to feed people. We had money for law enforcement, but we didn't have money for community engagement. And so we came to the local church at the time, and the local church gave us $4,000 to put on our first ever 2 back-to-back outreach events. And so we brought in a Christian hip-hop artist. We partnered with local grocery stores who gave us all the food. We got all these bikes donated, all this equipment, and we were out there in the middle of these buildings with a stage, sound system, and I was rapping with a rapper in uniform, way out of my comfort zone, by the way. Like, when he says I rap, I don't rap with like pride, like, look at me guys, I can spit. Like, I get up there, I'm like, holy moly, this is different. You know, and so, but I'll tell you what, when God calls you to do something, when God calls you to make a difference, I think sometimes it will feel different. There's like that tension of stepping into a new level of an anointing he has for all of us. But that new level comes with a new level of faith and fear, and it's different. But I want to encourage you guys, like, with one big thing, when we say the church was meant to engage the community, all I could think of when I was working in law enforcement was, okay, the media is selling that there's this huge racial divide going on. I'm going to go ask our church to be the voice for this. And so I remember, like, going to First Assembly, I think it was once in uniform, and sharing all that the church was doing for our city. Thanking the church, on the news outlets, thanking the church. I mean, bringing the church in. And those United events went so well that we started doing them back to back, and we started seeing 500 to 600 people coming out every year. And we kept going to the church and bringing churches out. It was Kevin Zahn's church in Heartland. It was Northview Church, or First Assembly at the time. We got Jonas Bundy and Bethel involved. We were trying to get churches just engaged and bringing them in. And it opened up doors for me in uniform to go into All Nations Church, Pastor Paul, it's an African church, and share there. And I feel like when we step into something different, we really start to make a difference. And I think for all of us in your spaces, it's who haven't you tapped into yet that could be a wonderful resource to bring in the gospel to your community? The public school system, the police department, the fire department. Who's waiting to be tapped into if you would just go ask? And that's what I think we're here to encourage us.
And Mike, maybe what you can do is you can talk a little bit about how could they go to their community in smaller community and maybe connect with a police officer or connect with schools. We both have stories to tell of how we did that. Some of it worked, some of it didn't work. But what is an effective way that they could just reach out to the police or the fire department or whoever?
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I thought was phenomenal that my pastor started doing, I didn't know where he got this idea, but he started doing luncheons for first responders. So they started smoking a bunch of food, and then they would actually serve it at the police department. So my pastor now has a really good bond with the chief of police in Moorhead, because that's where our church is located, Moorhead, Minnesota. And Chief Shannon, he just came to our first banquet event. I mean, he came to a small group that my pastor invited him to. At the time, Chief Todd would come to those things. So I would say if you just start with relationships, I know we all know that, but it's not that complex. And what cops don't love free food? So I'm speaking from the cops' perspective. But if you even think about this, so God put on my heart to start going to visit our local detention center. And when someone said Beach, North Dakota, I was like, home on the range. So I work with a lot of kids, and if they're part of the system, and by the system I mean the state now takes ownership of them. Some of them have gone to home on the range and beach, and so I was like, man, it's incredible that you're out there. But as a cop, I'd go into the detention center, and you should see the way kids look at you when you're a cop who are locked up. But then when you bring in Sandy's Donuts, and you have 100 donuts for free, all of a sudden the ice breaks, and we just start building relationships. So I would say we've always used food to build community, to build relationships, and that's always led to more ministry. So
one of the things I did as a youth pastor quite a bit, I just had some schools I would go to where they had 3 lunches. So it sounds funny when I say this. I'd take and go pick up the kids. I'd have a van, pick up the kids for the first lunch, and I'd go to McDonald's with them, and I'd get a Diet Coke and a hamburger. Then I'd go to the second lunch, and I'd get a Diet Coke and French fries. Then I'd go to the third lunch and get a Diet Coke and a cherry pie. That was the way I did that. And so it cost me a little bit and that sort of thing. It's like we say, pizza evangelism has been a big thing for me. I will just say to students, and you can do this with, hey, if you bring an unchurched person after school, I'll meet you and I'll buy you and your friend, lunch and free pizza. And it happens so many times. I have a real funny story. I was in a small church in Hawley helping them out do this. And we went in, and next thing I know, I'm back there helping them make the pizzas because I developed such a friendship with them. and anyways, we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden, I'm sitting with about 6 kids from Hawley. 3 of them were, I'd call Christians, the others were not. Some girl walks in, and they all scream out her name, and I forget what her name is. They say, hey, Sue, how you doing? And so I yelled out, hey, Sue, how you doing? And she looked at me and excused me for the way I say it, because she goes, who the hell are you? And all of a sudden these kids are, that's our pastor. It was so funny. But I didn't react to that. We just don't react to that stuff. We respond to it, but we don't react to it. But simple little things that we can do that really have a way of just changing what you are. It might sound so simple, but the gospel is so basic, it's so simple. You said something the other day that I don't know where it is, but one thing you said to me this morning, show up, serve, and you will see fruit. That was the phrase you used. Show up to serve, and you will see fruit. Just start doing things to reach out. He talked about the food that they would bring to police officers and just doing other things like that. I'm at Starbucks every day, as I've told you, but we have a guy that comes in every day and gives me, for a tip, I don't know why, but for some reason, I think he thinks because I'm old that he just likes me and he's old. He gives me these gold dollars and I got about, over the last couple of years, I probably have about 60, 70 of these. And I figured, what can I do with these things? So one day I got the idea. There was a teacher that came through, and she talked about being very depressed because of the whole pandemic thing and how it was just a tough thing for her. She was very discouraged. So I just remembered that this guy had given me this little coin. And sometimes it's the spur of the moment things like this, isn't it, that we do. And so I said, you know what? I reached into my pocket, pulled it out, and I said, you know what? Here's what I want to tell you. I have a master's in education, so I have an appreciation for. And I said, what you're doing, you're changing lives. You might not feel like you're doing it, but I wish I had a gold medal to give you. I don't have a gold medal, but I have a gold dollar. I want to give this to you to let you know that you are the best. She just broke down crying. The next day she drives through, she hands me a little gift, and in it is this little keychain thing here which says, you made a difference. That was the teacher. Her and I have continued to have a conversation going on. By the way, I've given these to 3 police officers on the Moorhead side too, and one of them, Michelle, came by the other day and she says, I still have my coin in my pocket here.
That's great.
You know what? I got the coins from somebody else.
Right.
But you use these ideas, and sometimes just be creative. Just ask God to give you that creative ability, just to do the simple little things.
Yeah.
But here's what's happened. That teacher, that police, Michelle and I are like best friends now, and she's a police officer that works in Moorhead on that side. And I tell her I'm praying for her all the time. She's not a believer, but you know what? We're connecting, we're connecting, we're connecting. And those are the things that can make a difference. Simple little things that we can do. So, you know, another thing that we were talking about, and we were both going to talk to this, the first step in bringing Jesus' presence into our world is learning to jump into our communities with enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And you can elaborate on it. We are not to fear and hate the world, but we're to love the world as God loved the world. He loved the world so much he gave Jesus to die on the cross. I work with a lot of people of differing lifestyles, gay and so forth. And one of the girls said to me one day, I was so afraid to talk to you, Cal, because of who you are. And opened up, and I said, well, I want you to know I don't agree with your lifestyle choice, but that's your choice. But I want you to know I believe God created you, God loves you, and I believe if God loves you, then I can love you. And she asked me for a hug. You just know this is going to, that's how simple it can be, but you want to add anything to that? Go ahead.
Well, and I want to say, I feel like something God has taught me over the years is like, you don't need to wait to be asked to do ministry. So like the detention center, we never were asked to go into the detention center. I just knew based on scripture, when I was naked, you clothed me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was in prison, you came to visit me. So it was like, I knew these kids were in prison. I knew they were locked up, and I had this burden to go visit them. And we started with donuts, and the donuts created this opportunity then that led to basketball, to then led into bringing other nonprofits in to mentor the kids. To the last 3 years, again, the local church, it was like, okay, what do these kids do for Christmas? So the first year we did it, I contacted our church and I said, hey, I want to throw a Christmas service for these kids. There's about 40 of them. And so they smoked a bunch of pulled pork and ribs and brisket, beans, cornbread. And then we called Shields and said, Shields, would you provide gifts for all the kids? They gave us 40 bags full of clothing, hats, gloves. And so, and it didn't cost me anything. And because I'm, again, like when you're a cop, you just don't have a lot of money. So you're just like relying on the Holy Spirit to provide. But the only thing I'm saying is like, I was never asked to go in there. And sometimes I feel like all of us, I still have to remind myself this. Sometimes you just have to start something to see fruit and to see it come through. Like, don't wait to be asked. Just go where you know the need is. Go where the gospel's already called us to go. Like, no one should ask us to go into foster care. We should just know that's a ministry. No one should ask us to find fatherless children. We already know that's a ministry. And I love what you said about, I already told this story, but you can't visit Cal at the Moorhead Starbucks. You shouldn't, because you can't get a conversation in, because all his employees come and sit with you, and it drives me crazy, but I love it.
That's why we go to another store
Yeah.
for our meetings.
They sit down and they talk to us, and then they talk to Cal, and they start, no joke, we're having like a professional conversation, and these kids are opened up to him like he's their dad. Cal, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. You just wouldn't believe it. Then another manager comes over. Cal, you wouldn't. And I'm like, do you guys not see we're having a conversation? But then in my heart, I'm like, this is the impact love has. Like you didn't ask, you just did. You just loved, you just served. And so, but back to detention, like the first night, or the first year it went so well. The second year it went even better. The third year we probably had our best event yet. where we had a full-on Christmas presentation. So much so, I'm leaving the police department at the end of June. I'm starting a program called Hip Hop and Hope, where we're going to go do full-time ministry with kids in treatment and incarceration, and then we're going to try to do 6 programs a year, conferences for the incarcerated, where a faith-based conference like this, but for people who are in prison or in juvie. So we're going to go in with live hip-hop, breakout sessions, keynote speakers, and just really bring the gospel and insight to people who are locked up. Because that's just, it's funny though, because I don't think any of this would have been birthed if I never just would have started showing up and serving. And then we just started seeing fruit. I have a kid who messages me on Instagram periodically, who I met in detention, met in a treatment center, just asking about life advice, checking in, seeing. I mean, I've had a girl that asked me to adopt her in juvie. I've had a boy ask me to adopt him in a treatment center, straight up, face to face. Officer Bloom, I gotta ask you a serious question. What's the serious question? Would you please adopt me? You know, and it's like, when those things happen, your heart is just like moved, but then you're also realizing it doesn't matter what kids have done, they're still kids, they still need the gospel, they still need a father and a mother, they still need love. And I feel like in your communities, man, in your public schools, don't wait to be asked. Just show up one day to a principal and say what needs to be done. You know what I mean? Like, hey, do you need a lunch buddy program? Do you need mentors to come and meet with some kids that are having extra problems in your elementary school once a week for the school year? Can I bring Burger King once a week, play checkers and have Burger King, or whatever it is, right? I mean, because we started doing that, and that led to us getting favor. We started then doing school assemblies where we'd bring in Christian artists into the public schools, and we'd be rapping and dancing and almost sharing the gospel without sharing it. I mean, it was just like incredible.
Hugely successful.
Yeah, it was, but honestly, it's the favor of God. You know what I mean? It's like, I've seen what we've done. We were doing the Cupid Shuffle one year in a park with 200 people from the Somali community in full burqas and hijabs, and we're dancing and doing the Cupid Shuffle, and they were all side to side. And no one asked us to show up to where they live, though. We just felt like, let's just show up there and serve. Yeah. So I think it's like, when God gives you any kind of vision or mission, just don't wait for someone to ask you for permission. Just start reaching out to different churches, your own church, fundraise, ask people to give. People love to give to stuff like that. And then just serve and wait and see the fruit that happens from it.
You know, he's been mentioning bringing the rappers. It's DPP. Any of you have ever been to Chicago? They're a black father and son combination. And they've actually come to Fargo with us and done things. Michael headed up, put together. We've been in all the Fargo schools doing assemblies. And DPB gets up there, and these are black guys from kind of almost like they're originally from New York, but in Birmingham now. But you know, you would only think, well, they'll be really effective in the inner city doing all this. But we've taken them. We took them to Rice, Minnesota, with this of 1,000 people, and those people fell in love with these guys. It's just like, when are you bringing them back? When are you bringing them back? And so we're trying to schedule them. We do have them coming in for Grafton when we do that. But, you know, again, we just have to raise the money. But if we can do it, these guys have a way. Here's what I've discovered. Sometimes I think we personally stereotype situations to believe that this will only work a certain way. I think one of the things that we said, and we wrote it down this way, your community needs missionaries. Removing ourselves from the people and criticizing the culture is not going to help us. Often that's what we do in our churches. That's what I was doing as well. We cannot run from the world, expect those people to come to our church. Don't be afraid. We really are encouraging. If you really want to reach a small community, and I believe with all my heart, I wish I could live in a small community all over again, because I have seen results of things just walking around, introducing myself, and realizing how hurt people, whether people are inner city or small town, basically it comes down to they almost have the same hurts, the same feelings. And so what we can do is we can reach out, but God's message of grace is, you know, making space, making time in our schedule. Too often I was one of those that was in my office, but the moment I'd start going, I'd go to schools. And you know what? Was it uncomfortable at times? Yes, it was. I was telling Michael, I think was it this morning, when I first was in the Wheaton church, I decided I wanted to reach out to the school, and the only way I could get in was I had to be a part of English as a second language. you guys, have you ever heard of that, where they teach Hispanic kids? I don't know Spanish. I was teaching these guys how to speak English. You can imagine how tough that was. And those were long things. But you know what? That began to open the door for what I was able to see happen there. And bring in some assembly speakers and things like that we could do. Michael can do a great job in those kind of communities like that. That's where I know I was telling you this morning, when I was a younger youth pastor, I remember at 33 I thought I was too old to be a youth pastor. Now I'm 66 and I'm just getting to the heyday and I'm loving what I'm doing more than anything. So don't let age be, don't let age be your cage. That's what I want to say. Allow yourself to grow and that sort of thing. And we can share these stories with you first, which we are, because they are life-changing things, but they are simple little things that we don't go and go, John 3:16 says, I've never done that way. I have, by the way. But, what we do is just let your life shine Jesus. What is it? An old artist, and many of you would remember, Sheila Walsh. Anybody remember Sheila Walsh? Best quote I ever heard her make. Live a life that demands an explanation. The best definition of evangelism, she said, is living a life that demands an explanation. And like I said, you don't have to necessarily be 4 points in the gospel with the message. One of the things I'm doing through Starbucks, and then we've got to get into some other thing, but a year ago, one of the girls standing beside me, and I hope it's okay to talk this way, but she was from a different lifestyle. She said it was May, it's Mental Health Month. Wouldn't it be cool if we could do something great? And I said, I don't know, but somehow in our conversation it came out, wouldn't it be nice if we could write little notes on the sleeves? And I said, boy, that would be great. I wonder if we could. So she went to talk to our manager, and Kelly said to her, hey, that sounds like a great idea. Have Kel help you coordinate that. She knew my background. I don't think they expected what was going to happen. So I said, okay, let's do this. So I took a case of sleeves, 1,400 in there. I took it over to Oak Grove, the Lutheran school, which I'm at now. At one time, I wasn't even allowed to speak there. Now I'm there every Tuesday doing chapel. And I said, we can't write scripture, but we can write words of encouragement, because the Bible says, encourage one another. And I can show you pictures on here. If you go on my Facebook, too, I could show you pictures. Well, these kids all of a sudden started getting into this. And they would write things, and let's see if I can find some really quick here for you, or read them to you. But here is Tomorrow Needs You. And then somebody with glasses on. Just here's another one. Shine, be brave. Do you see those at all? Can you see those okay? You are amazing. You're cool. You are king. All these things they would write. Well, we started putting those on the sleeves. And this is what they've been doing in Moorhead. It went over so successful last year. This year they did, and we've done the whole month. And you should see some of the things. But here's the kicker that happened. This is a Lutheran school, but they're not quite like maybe the other Christian school in town. But those kids did all that, and you know what they did after that? They dumped them all on a table, all laid hands on them, and prayed that God would use everything. This is what makes it, I didn't expect that. I think things that we get to do will automatically just happen. Yeah. Because God will take the idea, and we serve a creative God, and He'll turn some of our dumb ideas into the most, creative moments. And so I don't think there's anybody here that you could say, or don't excuse yourself. Well, I can't do that. I can't. There's always something every one of us can do, even if it's just a simple word of encouragement. So. Anything else you want to add? And then maybe we can share just a few thoughts on how to be most effective in your communities. Reaching out. Yeah. I
would say I'll close kind of, and then we can do even Q&A talk, whatever. But working in Fargo, I was an outreach officer, and so I was always working with the service community, like the social workers, social services, and groups like that. A lot of groups like public schools are really. They're wanting volunteers more than you could ever imagine to come in and ask to serve. We have a couple of public schools. The principals are so fed up with life because the same kids will fight, the same kids will flip off teachers, the same kids will cuss out teachers. they'll go home, they'll come back, and they'll do the same thing over and over again. There are schools that are desperate, I think, that if your church were to just say, hey, you know, I'm a so-and-so church, we're not going to come in and share this, you know, whatever message, but do you need mentors, do you need leaders? There's organizations, I think, if you guys are really hungry to just shift it up a little bit, switch it up a little bit, that would just welcome you with open arms. In a leadership role, the school system, the correctional setting for kids, the treatment center for kids. I would just encourage you, man, if you know anyone that can cook, clean, visit, remodel, financially support, whatever, I mean, just pull people in and resources. That's the only thing I wanted to say was there's so many opportunities to serve, and there's so many people, I think, waiting for servants to show up, but they don't even know where to look. Like, if you were to ask a public school principal, elementary school principal, where do I find volunteers that want to come work with at-risk youth? You know, it's like, well, I don't know. You know, where am I going to find them unless I go? That's why we have social services, who are just completely overworked. And I'm just speaking from kind of what I've seen is, I think the local church, there's never been a better time to be received by the community anywhere, because TikTok and Snap and all those platforms have allowed the culture of like destructiveness and what we see to travel into any community. So kids can follow any trend and follow anything and be a part of that. So I would say there's never been a better time for the church to really get connected if they just go out and ask. I really believe that.
And I really believe that too. We are called to serve. And I think what we need to start understanding is, how can we touch our community? It could be inviting a neighbor over. It could be as simple as just going to a restaurant and just somehow just letting your light shine, or talk to somebody, create a conversation. It could be volunteering at the school. You might do something, like I said, when I was doing the English as your second language, that was a long 1 hour period for me every week doing that. It was long, because I could hardly understand. Well, then I was like, what do you mean? What is that? You know, I had no idea. And I still don't know what some of the things meant. But the thing is that you just put yourself in there, and then all of a sudden those that are, you know, even the unrighteous will start to notice those things about you and realize maybe you do think more than just, you know, you're this high and almighty type personality or something like that. And they would do that. It's funny, I go to public schools and people drive through Starbucks, and guess what they refer to me as most of the time? Pastor Cal. It's amazing, even employees call me Pastor Cal. It's like, you know, you don't have to do that, but they do, you know. I'm actually getting a chance. And I'm again, if I get a little emotional, I apologize, but one of the girls found out I was a pastor. And she said, "You're a pastor?" And she has a baby, and her and her husband. And she said, "Would you be able to baptize my baby?" And you know, now theologically, I'm running into some, you know, how do I do this? I even called Pastor Winston for advice on how to, because I wanted to do this. Well, then I said, I talked about dedication, and her family loved that even more. So June 5th, 11 a.m., I'm dedicating her daughter, and dedicating the parents to raise their daughter. Yeah. That would never have happened had I not. And you know, and she's my supervisor. It's humbling to be a 66-year-old man having a 19-year-old tell you what to do. But I'm used to it. I was a youth pastor, okay? So I'm used to it anyways. But the one thing we want to encourage you. There is no stop. It's just you letting the dreams be your dreams. Yeah. And just say, okay, what could we do? Think of your community right now, and we'll take some time to answer questions, and you can ask us questions. Maybe we could do that. We got we got to be done at 10 o'clock, right? So I show about 23 minutes left. Do you have any questions or thoughts, or maybe we can help with suggestions? Yes, sir.
A comment. You both mentioned food as a medium to kind of get your foot in the door. My wife's a food service director in Williston, and they have a summer feeding program for free. They cut down a little bit on the budget, but they feed several thousand kids every day for most of the summer. And it's centered in low-income areas. So you have all these kids, and her cooks come there, they're hardened, schoolroom cooks. And they got tears coming down their eyes. They have families that come up in their pajamas with no parents. The oldest child brings the youngest ones down to get something to eat. And she's asked people to come and minister to those kids because they have to hurry up. You have 15 minutes and you have to go to another area of town. Right. So there's a huge need. There's a lady in our church that's starting to get involved, but they're begging for people to come there, play games with them, or do something. So every community, even the smaller towns, have these free meals.
Public housing and free meals.
Yeah. And the other thing that we did centered around food, and Gabby here was involved with it too in Williston. For a while, everybody was moving into town, and they were living at the Walmart parking lot. There was no housing. So they finally, we would go down there and bring home cooked meals.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
And
so, can I just say, look at your reaction to that. You just bubbled up right there with that. You remember, yes, and the joy.
You know
That's
what's so special about that?
Like that?
It's like when you're talking, I'm feeling the same thing as I was feeling back then. Like I want to do it. I'm like yes, but like we always need a vehicle to do it. And sometimes it feels to me like there's not a vehicle. Like you're talking about going into school, I would love to do that, but you have a master's in education, so they let you do it.
They don't know that.
Okay.
I've never told anybody.
I have to go to the school.
They just know I'm a youth pastor, or that's.
Anyway, I
yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that.
Is Walmart kicked them off because it got to be hundreds of vehicles there, and supposedly it was dangerous. But so I talked to the pastor of our church. Well, they're kicked, and we tried to find them at rest stops or different places. It took forever. So will you open up our church on Saturday nights? And well, yeah, let's try it. So we had over 100 people coming in, and we made up flyers, went around, tried to find people wandering around looking for work or living in their vehicle, and cooked the best meals we could. And we had people from all over the world. I remember 3 guys at 3 different tables that were from Ghana. And I said, come here, you gotta meet this other guy from Ghana. And they didn't know that each other was there in Williston, and they actually knew people from the places, the small towns they came from. But great vehicle to meet people, and those are 2 of the things you can do with food. But check out your schools and food service programs, and if you have a children's ministry, do anything with it.
And I didn't mean, if I sounded like I was just, nobody knew that, but I just want to stress to you, I don't think you have to wear, right, especially now in our culture now, because they are just looking, a lot of them are desperate just to find help.
Yeah. Well, it was Bruce's heart to want to just do something and to cook that drew me in, like, okay, I can help with that, you know? So same thing with the schools, it's like, how do we get our foot in the door?
You just have to go and ask. Just
Okay.
start by asking.
All right, maybe I need to ask someone else, because like I asked if I could go have lunch with my daughter and they told me no. So I'm like, oh, okay.
The western side of the stage is pretty closed off to anybody, any access. Whopper's the same way. I have no access into the schools.
Offer to be a playground supervisor.
Really?
Excellent
Will they let
idea
you do
right
that?
there.
Or a para, like
Yeah.
Fargo Public Schools right now, it's like the list of openings is like sad. How many openings there are. But yeah, I think once you build favor with a principal, the doors then shift on what you can and can't do. And that's what I guess I kind of feel like. I would say for anyone, being a para is like one of the greatest jobs, and you're also getting paired with a lot of the most at-risk kids in the school at times too, and getting to know them and build relationships with them.
But
And
that's
what
like a
Dustin
paid
was-
position, not volunteer, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what Dustin was saying about the closed, West Fargo was closed like that too. I couldn't get in. Well, you just begin to pray for it, and that's one of the schools I went and just met kids for lunch and then took them. And then one of the teachers, she's not a teacher, she's a born-again school psychologist for that school. And she said, my husband and I are taking over the youth ministry at church and we're looking for some advice. Would you be able to meet with me? And I said, yeah, do me a favor. Let's meet in the lunchroom at your school over lunch. She said, well, let me check with my principal. He okayed it. I would go in there. We never got, it was like you and I at Starbucks. Kids were coming up and talking all the time. It opened the door to where I can remember several weeks later walking in to go check in and the principal looking at me and just waving me on like that. But that's not the way it started. So you gotta have that patience sometimes to just be creative, just think things.
Even if it was an after-school service program. So like, but you could meet maybe you could ask if you could meet outside of the school and whether you're feeding kids, doing VBS style things, mentoring like the YMCA does, but a church is leading it. I just think when you start getting favor, you start seeing new doors open, like with principals. Once they can trust you a little, they'll trust you with a lot because they'll never say it, but the needs are so incredible. They just need people.
But if you go in there right away with the idea that, you know, as you're sitting down with that kid, John 3:16 says, for God so loved, and you know what I'm saying, traditional preaching. Believe me, I believe in the power in the preaching, I believe it. But they need to see you and who you are. They need to see your heart and feel that. And as you do that, then you'll earn the right to do those kind of things along the way. So, anyway, yeah.
With in Dickinson, part of the main vision of our church is we have a lot of small communities around, and in our ministry's been 50-mile radius, and so you have like South Art, New England, Richardson, Taylor, Belfield, Medora, all in that area, and we've had people over the years coming to Dickinson because we just in the last 15, 20 years added New England because when Pastor Jim came in, there was a church in New England. But these smaller communities don't have churches. My question is what has been your experience with coming into communities, or if you have that, don't have a church established, but there's, you know, I don't know if this is an appropriate way to mention, but some of these communities are like bedroom communities to Dickinson. Yep. They do their shopping at Dickinson, they do their everything to Dickinson because they don't have. So what is your, if we were to, you know, bring you guys in to come into these smaller, like reach out into smaller communities, and they don't have churches, like.
Well, let me give you a couple examples of what we're. Number one, the first one we did, we reached out to a church, and it was about 50 miles from Detroit Lakes over in the Minnesota side. And the Detroit Lakes church gave me $1,000 to kick it off. And we went into the community Friday night. We brought the two guys that could never remember to say their names. Kawasi, and they're from Southside Chicago. Musically, they're phenomenal. And, you know, we had maybe, I think, 15 people that first night. The next day, there was one lady so touched that she went home and created all this artistic stuff. She wasn't a believer because Saturday night she accepted Jesus. She raised her hand to accept Christ. But she created all this cool stuff we gave away to people. And, you know, we just did that. And I was still coming up short. I had to come up. And then someone came up and gave us $75. Someone came up. One lady said, I'm from Orlando, Florida, visiting my relatives. I can't believe this, and gave me a check. We ended up clearing our budget by $75, but we were all set done just through that experience. But we got a church. Now, like a church like Dickinson, you could do, we are going to Max, North Dakota. Anybody know where that is? Yeah. We're calling it Maximize, North Dakota.
By the way, he's so good at doing things like that. He's so funny.
And but Journey Church, mind it, I'm working with Pastor Dan Dangerfield on that. They have some people that come. So we're going in there. The young man that is from that community, they met with me for lunch when I was up in Minot. This family became so excited. They pretty much got this whole thing covered now. And you know, they just started doing that. And so we're going to start, hopefully, and we still haven't got to talk to a satellite type church. They're only about, what did you say, 30 miles from Minot? So it's not that far. But it would be nice if we could start a Bible study or a home group or something there. It's in the beginning. What we bring, just so you know, Chicago for 30 years. You've been involved with me for how many years? I don't know, but you even brought your son, was it last year or the year before? And he married a girl from my church, which I was okay with. Chelsea was one of my daughter's best friends. And you know, we go into these, we have accumulated. I have a trailer that the wall comes down. We have staging, we have lighting, we have sound, we have everything. We even have grills, we have everything. We have it all intact, so there's no cost in us renting that stuff or buying that stuff. The only thing I need to cover is I need a vehicle that's a 3/4 ton truck or something to pull it, because it is huge. You've seen it, it's very fun. We have all that. And so we can come in and do that. We just focus more on let's get the community raised and raising money so we can do giveaways, and we give away bikes and big screen TVs. And I have a guy that Tim Olson, he's given me almost 1,000 teddy bears over the last couple of years. And we're giving away teddy bears to people. If you go on my Facebook, you'd see pictures. We have 188 backpacks ready to go for Chicago this year. We have, we are the reason, Michael, one of the reasons, we got a trailer behind there that's empty. We're picking up 140 boxes of brand new clothing today that we're taking back with us to give away at these small communities. God seems to open these doors. I think it's one thing you said, we got to take that initial step. Mm-hmm. And you know, just look for it. It may not work the first time. Don't worry about that. But I believe if you've got a heart to touch your community, you will all of a sudden find, where did that idea come from? That's how simple I believe this can be. Yeah. And so when we started doing some of the smaller communities, believe me, I just never dreamed. I would say, by the way, every small community we've done so far, we've only done 3 last year. But all of them broke even, or people donated to it, and we were. I don't even know where it came from. Some of the money just came to us, and so I just believe God put that. You know, so I would say just target some area. Your church just okay. Let's do one area this year. That's what we bring. We come in for a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We bring in a Friday night kind of a concert thing. Well, what if only 10 kids show up? 10 kids are hearing something. What if only 20 kids on the Saturday afternoon for the children come? They're all going to go home with teddy bears. They're all going to go home feeling loved. And I bring people with it. Then we invite the entire town for lunch or for dinner. My goal is to feed an entire town, and even greater than that, I want to see an entire town come to know Jesus Christ. And then we'll do that Saturday night, present the gospel, a concert and all of that, Saturday night. And then Sunday morning do what we call a 60-minute service. 20 minutes of music, 20 minutes of changed lives, stories, and 20 minutes of a message of sharing how you can know Jesus Christ as your own Savior. Yeah. So that's what we're doing. So we got 10 minutes left. Any questions? Yes?
So when you go in and have an event in a small town, do you see leaders stepping up and wanting to continue it? Or does it just kind of hang there on the event and then you leave? And I guess my question is, how do you help sustain this with leadership?
Yeah, one of the things we try to do is connect it to a church in some way. That's why Max is going to be connected to Journey Church. Monoghan, where we hit, we coupled together with a church out there that was devastated. Their pastor had committed suicide 3 months before that. They were a devastated church. But Detroit Lakes Church, their pastor, by the way, was in my youth group about 20 years ago. He had a vision to touch that community, and their church gave $1,000 to do that. And they have been continuing on that, and that church is starting to go. It's there. I mean, it's not an overwhelming church. It's maybe 25 or 30 people there. But the stories that just came out of that were wonderful. Rice, Minnesota is another one. They're building a church there now. That was the goal. That pastor, when we worked with him, he went to every community in Rice, Minnesota, and got people, a town of 1,000 people, got businesses to give, and they gave him over $5,000. And we spent $3,500 of it on toys and gifts to give away to people. And we used the other amount to pay. We had 350 people show up for that.
Wow.
So yeah, we try to do that best. At Grafton, we are connected there because there's churches there, and Maddie often camped there. It was the first time we tried that. It worked out. But the guy that was so sold on that, he is so sold. He invited me up, and I shared the whole story with the Kiwanis group there, and the Kiwanis Club gave me $3,000 for the outreach in Grafton. So it can happen. So yes, we believe strongly. We got to connect it somehow, just not be a man.
And I think it's, and I see your hand, just now just be brief. I think it's crucial for the church to take ownership.
Yes.
So it's like, Cal, we want an event like this to come, or we want to do evangelism, but we'll take ownership, and here's our plan of follow-up when it's done. Like, we want to get We want to follow cards. We want to have a QR code for people to scan so then we can get their email right away. Whatever it is to the LA Dream Center. I called the LA Dream Center a long time ago, a big outreach program in LA. But when they originally started in the ghetto, like Compton, Watts, they started doing what they called Adopt a Block, where they would literally do the same outreaches every week on the same block. And it's just that concept of adopting New England, adopting small communities, having the follow-up method in place as a church, I think is key. Like taking care of
Bismarck has now.
Yeah, the Dream Center, yeah. I saw that on Facebook. That's incredible.
And we do anything we can. We might even give them a phone number of somebody, with permission of the person that's done it. But, you know, we just look for ways. And I wouldn't, are we 100% successful? No. But we are successful with some. That's all it meant. You know, that's what matters. It just takes a spark. You were going to ask something.
Well, I was going to say, kind of clarify, you're more of a priming of the pump.
Yeah,
so you come into the community, and then wherever that is, you're basically the icebreaker, the pump primer, and then like you clarified, the church then is kind of running with it. So you're just priming the pump. You're trying to create the opportunity, and then we move from there.
Right, and if you want, I would come in and meet with you guys, and that's what I do. We want to find a way, even if it's going to be 30 miles away. This is a church that's going to care for you. I know you got to drive there. I know you got to do this. I know whatever. But here's what you need to do. We really encourage. What are the next steps? Begin to read your Bible. Begin to pray. But get yourself into a church where you know they love God and they will love you.
Yeah.
That's basically what it comes down to.
Or even with Hip Hop and Hope, just to so New England's like on my radar to go out and do an event there. But just to be able to tell the women there at the prison who don't know about it. I heard there's some satellite stuff going on, but who don't know about it, like Dickinson Assembly of God. I forgot the church name you said, but it's like, this is a great place to even have you or a staff come out and say, man, we're here, this is our location. Like, plugging them into the local church is the greatest thing. So,
now how much time we got left, bud? 5 minutes?
We can wrap it up so people can go to the bathroom.
Anything else? Anybody else have a question?
Everyone thinks it, they just don't say it.
You know, again, we're not going to go in and you know, it sounds like we're selling ourselves. Please, I hope you understand that's not, you know me well enough to know that too. But, you know, I just have a heart to see people come to know Christ. And my heart is, for whatever reason, I'm going to continue doing Chicago. We started Minneapolis last year. We were just a few blocks from where George Floyd was killed. We spent some time down there, and we're seeing lives touched. These small communities, when I go in there, I leave there just feeling sometimes you wouldn't believe the rich connections we've made with people. And I just realized some people they don't know what to do. They don't have anything. We just can help connect them to others and you know, find out what happens. And there's story after story we could tell, but we don't have the time to do that. So, you know, just kind of wrapping it up, you know, you can take some of that. Mike, explain this a little bit more. If you want to go online, just YouTube it and type in Officer Michael Bloom or Fargo United, Fargo United DPB, and you'll see the videos these guys have done, and you'd see the creativity. Again, we can't afford to bring in a DPB or things like that, but Michael's going to join us on a few of these things, what we do, and I'm going to be, but my dream is to touch as many small communities as we possibly can touch.
Yeah.
And so if you're a town, how many of you are in towns of 1,000 or less? Okay? But even bigger towns. Grafton is 2,500. We'll work with you if you want to reach out to a smaller community and that sort of thing. You know, Dave Liedall, the new pastor at Journey Church, Northview Church, he and Mike, tell him a little bit. You're doing something. Did you go to him with that idea about the housing thing or whatever you guys were doing? Harper, or what was it called?
Oh yeah, so we're going to revamp a food pantry with the church. His church is bringing in like 50 volunteers to paint, refurnish, redo the whole food pantry. So
that's a fundraising card there. You don't have to take that too, but here's a little bit. If you can have, these are a little bit of what goes on with Reach the Heart there. So there you go there. But, so okay,
love you guys, man. Thanks for coming.
Hey, listen. Anybody from a town of less than 500? Two of you? Just the two of you? You're not from the same church, are you?
No. How to see who you were?
Well, I want you to know, Mark, you've been at your church for a number of years, haven't you?
Yeah.
How long you been there?
16 years.
How many?
16.
Oh my goodness. How long have you been in your community?
10.
10 years? You know what, if you guys don't mind, you're my gold medal winners today, okay? And I just want you to know, Mark, I know you've been there, and I know it's not a gold medal, but it's a gold coin. Put it somewhere. I just want you to know, you're a star. You're a star, okay? And you're a star. You can touch your communities, guys. It doesn't have to be Billy Graham coming in.
And if you guys ever want to collaborate, connect, have any questions, all my contacts on the cards we handed out. So call me anytime or email me.
And here's my
anytime.
card too. If you say go back and talk, here's my phone number. This is my number to my personal cell that's on here. So I'll just pass these out, and you guys, if you guys can contact me. Again, we're not trying to sell ourselves. We're not going to come in and say you have to. You know, we're just looking for ways and people to. I'm raising money through churches and that sort of thing to help pay for it. We just want to help. I believe we can. My dream is, and Michael, I would love to hit before I know I'm 66 years of age. Somebody said I should be retired already, and I feel like I'm just beginning. So, but I think you know, I would like to see us over the next 10 years hit at least 50 small communities and present Jesus in a real clear way. So, yes.
About small communities, he was talking about the food program. The food program is only accepted in school districts where there's poverty of 50% of kids on the food program. So a lot of your little small towns, like mine included, did not get that program because they're in a bigger school district, because their school is too small to have a school. And when they get to that bigger school district does not qualify for that food program. And so a lot of your little towns aren't getting these meals in the park like some of your bigger programs. And that was something we did even before COVID. We were going into the park and feeding these kids, a lot of them home alone throughout the day. And it's like, so I just suggest, just because you know that bigger communities are doing this, if you know your smaller communities outside, they're not getting access to that. If you contact Great Plains Food Bank, they will help you.
Yep.
You can get access from them so that your church doesn't have to fund the whole thing. But I guess one story I'll just share real quick. We did this in the park years ago, and one of the boys, I was asking him, you know, do you want Lay's chips or Dorito, you know, whatever? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I learned if you're hungry, you eat anything. And I never forgot that, because it's not just a food thing, it's a spiritual thing, it's a relationship thing. If you're dying for relationships, you're gonna go to the gang, or you're gonna go to this, or you're gonna go to the church. So let's put ourselves out there, so when they're hungry, they pick us. You know?
And they know who to, you know, just get yourself out there. Don't be afraid to just flesh out who you are. You don't have to be weird about it. You can be normal. Just love people, care about people, and you can make a huge difference wherever you are. We turn it back over to you. So, and if you want any other information here, Michael's got some stuff on. But we have to go to the next session at 10:15, so we got about 10 or 5, 10.